The Republican Senate just passed Trump's big, beautiful bill today, which has been described as the worst bill in the history of the United States, and we need to break it down. Trump's now threatening to sic Doge on Elon Musk and looking into deporting him. You've got a crazy Candace Owens Donald Trump scandal as she dropped bombshell details of an alleged call she had with the president. And what Gavin Newsom just exposed by doing what was once unthinkable for Democrats, gutting environmental protections. We're talking about all that and even more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, starting with this. It officially happened. I was right. Despite all the blah, blah, blah of I have this concern and this reservation, the Senate has officially passed Trump's big, beautiful bill. And according to reports, you had party leaders haggling with holdouts until the very last minute, but they were able to finally secure the votes after debating and voting on amendments in a record-breaking 27-hour-long session. But even then, they just barely managed it, with the measure passing by a vote of 51-50, with Vice President J.D. Vance stepping in to break the tie after 3 Republicans joined all Democrats in opposition. And those being Senators Rand Paul and Thom Tillis, who previously said that they would not support the bill, as well as Susan Collins. And as far as, what is in the Senate version of the bill, as of recording, you have analysts and the media still trying to parse out all of the new changes and last-minute additions and the nearly 1,000 pages of text. But we do know that the broad strokes of the Senate bill hit the same key points as the House version. They both extend trillions of dollars in tax cuts enacted during Trump's first term and allocate more money to immigration enforcement while dramatically cutting healthcare and other essential benefits. But then also, generally speaking, this bill goes way further than its companion in the House on a number of issues. Right, first and foremost, an analysis by the Congressional Budget Office found that the Senate bill will add $3.3 trillion to the national debt over a decade. And I know at that level, it sounds like just made up numbers, but that is more than the $2.4 trillion price tag for the House version. But then also somehow, despite costing so much more, the Senate bill will also impose even deeper cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, which compose the most significant cost reductions in both versions. The CBO here estimating that the Senate bill would slash $1.1 trillion in healthcare spending, mostly for Medicaid, and cause 11.8 million more Americans to become uninsured in the next decade, which is significantly more than what's been described as the crazy House version, which the CBO predicted would cause 10.3 million people to become uninsured over the same time period. Though also, notably here, you had the Senate proposal doubling the amount of money allocated to a rural health fund to $50 billion a year. That aims at appeasing some of the senators who were worried about Medicaid cuts for their rural constituents like Lisa Murkowski. Right, and that is, Murkowski was widely regarded as the make-or-break vote here. I mean, you had GOP leaders fighting tooth and nail to win her over, including by adding several provisions that would benefit Alaska specifically. But also, very notably here, the Senate bill would also ease some of the restrictions on food stamps proposed in the House version, though experts say that millions of Americans will still lose access to the benefits. Beyond that, there were also a number of other notable changes in the Senate bill, like increasing the debt ceiling to $5 trillion, much higher than the $4 trillion cap proposed by the House. The Senate also got rid of a controversial measure that would ban states from regulating AI for 10 years, and it slightly scaled back some of the cuts to Biden-era clean energy subsidies. And so one, those are just some of the more significant differences between the two versions, and two, because of the changes, the bill's now gonna have to go back to the House to be reconciled and passed again, which some have said might be harder than expected. Right, and that because throughout negotiations in the Senate, numerous House Republicans have made it clear that they're unhappy with the direction that the bill was heading. While you had Speaker Mike Johnson warning his members to reserve judgment until the Senate actually finalized their version, we've already seen numerous Republican leaders in the House slamming the newly passed bill, which is very, very notable because only 3 Republicans have to defect for it to be dead in the water. But despite what appears to be major concerns, you have Johnson and the House Republican leadership coming out with a statement saying, Republicans were elected to do exactly what this bill achieves: secure the border, make tax cuts permanent, unleash American energy dominance, restore peace through strength, cut wasteful spending, and return to a government that puts Americans first. This bill is President Trump's agenda, and we are making it long. And that, as you had Trump celebrating the passage of the bill through the Senate, falsely claiming that it wouldn't cut Medicaid, among other things, and calling on the House to do the same by its July 4th deadline. Writing, we can have all this right now, but only if the House GOP unites, ignores its occasional grandstanders, you know who you are, and does the right thing, which is sending this bill to my desk. And so for now, we'll have to wait to see what happens. Does it die? Does it pass? If it passes, is it the exact Senate version, or do they make changes? Because if they make changes from the Senate version, which you have experts saying would seem likely, the Senate would also have to vote again. But also, according to the New York Times, most senators fled the Capitol immediately after passing their version of the BBB, with the outlet reporting the mass departure means there is no way the Senate could be convened again to vote on the bill this week if the House decides to make changes. But also, as Republicans are going to continue fighting over the details of the BBB, we're seeing another major battle play out, and that is between Trump and Elon Musk. Because as you already know, the reason that Trump and Musk initially had their very public falling out was because of Musk's vocal opposition to Trump's bill. You had him posting constantly about just how horrible it was, and then after the feud escalated, he claimed that Trump was in the Epstein files and suggested that he might create a third party. Then you had Trump hitting back at Elon, threatening to cancel the many contracts that his various companies have with the federal government. But then, both men appeared to walk back their comments and things kind of chilled out, with Musk deleting some of his more inflammatory posts and admitting he regrets some of the posts went too far. And then Trump, he said that he wished Elon the best and had no hard hard feelings. With Trump then also adding that he hadn't given any more thought to his threat of canceling Musk's contracts or investigating his immigration status, as some of the president's allies had suggested. But now it feels like all of that is out the window. But as the Senate began the voting process early yesterday, you had Elon making a few posts slamming the BBB and noting that polls across the ideological spectrum have shown widespread opposition to it. And since then, he's just ramped things up, posting repeatedly and almost exclusively about the bill and taking swings at the Republican Party. With him writing in one post that it was obvious from the spending bill that we live in a one-party country, the Porky Pig Party, and adding, time for a new political party that actually cares about the people. Saying if this insane spending bill passes, the American Party will be formed the next day. And then beyond that, you had Musk taking aim at GOP lawmakers who support the bill, writing, every member of Congress who campaigned on reducing government spending and then immediately voted for the biggest debt increase in history should hang their head in shame. And they will lose their primary next year if it is the last thing I do on this earth. And eventually, Musk's post got to the point that Trump just couldn't ignore it, with the president weighing in on Truth Social, implying that Musk only opposes this bill because it rolls back Biden-era tax credits for EVs, which is a move that JP Morgan estimates could cost Tesla $1.2 billion a year. And in his post, you had Trump arguing that he has long opposed the tax credits, which he called the EV mandate, with him noting that he campaigned on getting rid of the policy and claimed that Elon knew his feelings on the matter before he endorsed it. With Trump then going on to threaten Musk with a weapon he helped create, writing, Elon may get more subsidy than any human being in history by far, and without subsidies, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back home to South Africa. No more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production, and our country would save a fortune. Perhaps we should have Doge take a good, hard look at this. Big money to be saved. And while speaking to reporters this morning, you had Trump doubling down on those remarks. With him claiming that Musk was upset because he's losing his EV mandate, and then reiterating his threat, saying, but you know, he could lose a lot more than that, I can tell you, right? Elon could lose a lot more than that. And adding, we might have to put Doge on Elon. Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? And then, when asked by a reporter whether he would deport Musk, Trump responded, I don't know, we'll have to take a look. And then you had Musk responding to a clip of Trump saying he might sic Doge on his company, is writing, so tempting to escalate this, so tempting, but I will refrain for now. To which I'll say, one, my brother in Christ, you already publicly said, hey, the guy I spent hundreds of millions of dollars on to become president is in the Epstein files. And two, you have literally threatened to use your fortune to get anyone who supports this bill out of Congress if it's the last thing you do. Like, unless you have the Epstein files, which you stole through putting Starlink on the fucking roof of the White House, where there's like a photo of you and Donald Trump hand in hand hacking an election machine. I don't really know what you could possibly do that's gonna have an impact. It's all, I guess, just kind of giving Scorned X paired with Frankenstein being killed by Frankenstein's monster. But hey, for now, we'll have to wait to see what happens with this war of words, if they're gonna kiss and make up, and then also what's gonna happen with the BBB as it hits the House. But then next up in the news today, we should talk about how Bryan Kohberger has now accepted a plea deal in the murder of those 4 college students at the University of Idaho, and it has sparked a massive reaction. And if you need a refresher, because it's been a minute, back in November of 2022, 4 students were stabbed to death at their off-campus home in the early morning after a night out, which then led to a manhunt for the suspect and Kohberger getting arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania 6 weeks after the murders. Right, and the details of the case, they've just chilled anyone following it. And in 2023, you had a judge entering a not guilty plea on Kohberger's behalf after he just stood silent and declined to enter a plea himself. Though he also maintained his innocence and claimed he was out driving at the time of the murders. Right, and that led to a ton of legal back and forth with his lawyers trying to remove the possibility of a death penalty sentencing by arguing that he's been diagnosed with autism, though that motion was not successful. They also attempted to delay the trial, but it was still scheduled to begin in August and last several months. With then all of that leading to today's news where Kohberger has accepted a plea deal, meaning he can avoid the death penalty in exchange for pleading guilty to 4 first-degree murder counts and a burglary charge. So technically, it's not a done deal because he's expected to attend a hearing tomorrow morning to enter the deal. And if everything goes as expected there, he'll skip the trial and likely be sentenced to life in prison in July. And very notably, all of this is according to the Idaho Statesman. Prosecutors actually met with the victims' families last week to discuss the possibility of the deal, with the outlet also obtaining a letter that was sent to the family breaking the news. With that reading, we cannot fathom the toll that this case has taken on your family. This resolution is our sincere attempt to seek justice for your family. This agreement ensures that the defendant will be convicted, will spend the rest of his life in prison, and will not be able to put you and the other families through the uncertainty of decades of post-conviction appeals. But many of the family members, they're not happy about this at all. For example, the family of one of the victims, Kaylee Gonsalves, writing on Facebook that we are beyond furious at the state of Idaho. they have failed us, right? And they have been very in favor of Kohberger facing the death penalty, arguing that it is the only equivalent punishment for someone convicted of murder. With the family then also speaking to CNN to express frustration that they weren't even called about the apparent deal and they only learned of it via an emailed letter. And adding, after more than 2 years, this is how it concludes, with a secretive deal and a hurried effort to close the case without any input from the victims' families on the plea details. So that is, not every single family member feels the same way. With the father of Madison Mogen telling the Statesman that if this agreement means he can avoid reopening wounds, he accepts it. But again, some, including some family members as well as the public at large, they were hoping that a trial here might bring forward some answers and transparency. Or like if anyone was targeted specifically, or if this really was just a random act of violence. Because, right now, one of the most chilling elements of this whole thing is we still do not know the motive. And as far as what we do know about it, we know that he was studying to get a PhD in criminology at Washington State University, and the New York Times reporting that he had a special interest in criminals. Also, not long before the murders were committed, he had asked people on Reddit who had been in prison to describe their thoughts, emotions, and actions from the beginning to end of the crime commission process. And then as far as evidence pointing to Kohberger, investigators linked him to DNA that was found on the button snap of a knife sheath left at the crime scene. And based on cell phone data, he had allegedly been near the victim's house at least a dozen times in the months leading up to the killings. But that, as there are still questions that many have, like why the other 2 roommates in the house were spared in the killing spree. Or when other roommates said she heard what sounded like crying from another room, and she later opened her door and saw a man in black clothes and a mask, and once he left, she began texting another roommate who lived. But they also reportedly didn't call 911 until a friend discovered one of the bodies the next day. Right? And all of this has led to a lot of discussion online and subreddits devoted to the case and the suspect. And in fact, this case took off so much that you had true crime TikTok sleuths beginning theorizing and investigating on their own, and it led to a whole other frenzy of accusations and even a lawsuit. But for now, we'll have to wait to see what happens, though it seems pretty locked in. But again, technically, the official plea hearing is set for tomorrow, and judges in Idaho can reject plea deals, though that is also rare. And well, of course, I'd love to know anyone's thoughts on this, especially if you've been following this case. What are your thoughts about these most recent updates? And then you've got even more news in just a moment, but first, I love you beautiful bastards. I do, but I also can't help but wonder with some of y'all, why doesn't that poor bastard with razor burn use Henson shaving? Because it's true, shaving can come with razor burn, nicks, ingrown hairs. It can be a never-ending battle. And shaving it shouldn't feel like a war zone with razor burn, nicks, or ingrown hairs. I mean, it can actually be healthy for your skin, and it's simply by switching to Henson shaving. I mean, this is the razor I've used for years, well before they became a sponsor of the show, and it gave me the cleanest, healthiest shave, no irritation, no redness. Because most razors, they let the blade wobble, and if you're thinking about it, like, would you want your kitchen knife flexing while cutting? No. And Henson razors, they're precision engineered in the same Canadian aerospace shop that worked on parts for the Mars rover. The blades, they extend just 1/1000th of an inch for a stable, skin-friendly shave. And all of that is like, did you know that every year 2 billion plastic razors, they end up in landfills? But Henson, it lasts a lifetime. Replaceable blades cost only $3 to $5 annually, no subscription fees. And it's really just a no-brainer. So scan that QR code or go to hensonshaving.com/DeFranco to pick the razor for you and use code DeFranco to get a pack of 100 blades free with your razor. That's enough for 2 years of shaving, so just make sure to add it to your cart. That's HENSONSHAVING.com/DeFranco, code DeFranco. Your skin will thank you. But then next up today, this Candace Owens, Donald Trump, Emmanuel Macron scandal, it's a weird one. Right, so for some background here, there is a right-wing conspiracy theory out there that Emmanuel Macron's wife, Brigitte, is trans. And she's even previously filed a complaint against 2 people who spread that claim on YouTube and won 8,000 euros in damages. Right, and that is, Candace Owens has posted multiple videos on the topic, with the most recent being uploaded in February. But then yesterday, Candace said, I gotta tell y'all something. And she put out a video saying that not long after posting the February video, she got a call from a friend with ties to the White House.
He says somebody very high up at the White House has asked me to ask you if, as a favor, you could stop speaking about Brigitte Macron. Like, what? Excuse me?
And Candace says that friend said the request came from someone very close to Trump, very high up. But then you had Candace saying, well, she just kind of shut that down, claiming that it's her free speech right to talk about the story. But then she said she called that person back to learn more about, where is this coming from? Or saying she wanted to know why this request is being made, especially since she had seen that President Macron was actually in DC at the time, which caught her attention.
When I call that person back, they tell me something that is even stranger. They say, look, I again am the messenger here. What I was told from somebody that's pretty high up at the White House is that Emmanuel Macron is holding up negotiations to end the Russian and Ukrainian war unless you stop speaking about his wife.
And you had Candace saying, she hung up in shock that her comments were allegedly holding up these negotiations, saying the whole thing, it just sounded unbelievable. And so she claims, once again, she calls this person back to figure out who exactly is asking this of her. And she says that she learns that Trump was apparently on one of the previous calls with her. And then she says the situation continues to develop, saying she later got another call from someone else in the White House who allegedly told her,
look, you should do it because it's the president and he's asking you to do it. What else do you want me to say? Just do it. Just stop talking about Brigitte Macron. Astounding. Reflecting on that level of arrogance because he told you to do it. It's an order, so you should do it.
Right, and so you had Owens saying, that pissed her off. She didn't like that someone was telling her to take orders from the president, no questions asked. And so she says she ends up talking to more people about the situation to think it through. With Candace Owens then saying she's told by a White House advisor that she needs to keep her phone on her for a call, but that when she answered, it wasn't just an advisor on the phone.
So here's what happened. I'm negotiating this thing. I'm negotiating Ukraine and Russia, and you wouldn't believe how many parts are part. It is President Donald J. Trump. He is calling me.
And she claims that Trump said that Macron actually pulled him aside while he was walking to Macron's car.
And then Macron says to him, Mr. President, do you know Candace Owens? And I say, yes, of course I know Candace Owens. What's going on? And then the president says to me, you must be a very powerful person, Candace. We're talking about the president of France taking me aside to talk about your podcast. And then continues his narrative, and he tells me that Emmanuel Macron is requesting to his face that I stop speaking about his wife. And one of the things Trump said is he tells me, she's old, and this is really, really impacting her. And I'm listening, and he's, in one of his Trump monologues, he's very funny. And then he said, I saw her, Candace, I saw her up close, and she looks like a woman to me. She looks like a woman to me.
With Owens then saying she pushed back against Trump and told him that it is not her fault that Macron, quote, married someone with a penis. To which she says that Trump pushed back and said that the deal is close to done and that he wants to work with Macron on this. And so she says,
look, I'm happy to do this for the short. Obviously, I don't want to have on my conscience that less Christian men could have died in the East if I just shut up about something. But I'm very clear to him that this is going to be short term. And that I fully expect that in a few months, I will be able to speak about this.
With Candace then going on to say that it became hard for her to tell if Trump was okay with this short-term deal or wanted her to zip it up forever, but Trump then tried to butter her up by offering to go on her show. With her then saying that the call ends, she was just shocked that it happened, but she said that her main takeaway was this.
Emmanuel Macron must step down, okay? Because if that is true, and I will say that did not come from Trump. He did not say specifically he's holding up negotiations for this, but he did say specifically that they were talking about the Ukraine and Russia war all day, and he's just trying to make it all happen. And that is when Macron took him to the side. So I kind of trust the information.
With Owens even then going on to speculate that Macron came to the States specifically to talk to Trump about her and not Ukraine. And she also insisted that this proves that she is correct. And essentially saying that the Macrons are only going through this trouble because they know she's right.
Right. It is confirmed fact, put it on Wikipedia that Brigitte Macron was born Jean-Michel Trogneau. We can just go ahead and do that, right?
With Owens then going on to say that she thinks this likely exposed an even bigger web. But today, we're not going to be focusing on that part. We're just talking about the direct claims that Trump asked her to stop talking about Brigitte, which if true or not, though, especially if true, would be pretty notable because as Candace's claims about Brigitte were spreading online, you also had outlets like The Telegraph noting that if this, quote, rumor becomes associated with supporters of Trump, the issue could add further strain to an already tricky relationship between the US president and his French counterpart. With them then noting that while the conspiracy has existed for years, it is clearly a recycled accusation, as people have said the same thing about other female leaders like Michelle Obama and Jacinda Ardern. And there you have The Telegraph adding that even if it's patently nonsense, the fact that many current world leaders, especially Trump and his allies, are engaging in conspiracy theory rhetoric means that it's harder to outright dismiss it. And that is, you had outlets like Media Matters noting that on places like TikTok, videos exploring this theory have gotten hundreds of thousands of views, and they're also getting tons of attention in France specifically. Right? And a lot of the conversation has been about how you have these online influencers having connections to the White House, and what they're saying is having an impact. But for now, we'll have to wait to see how all this plays out, especially because it is coming at a time where we've seen Candace Owens and others breaking from the president on key issues. And yeah, I don't know, just the state of things. I feel like every day I look at the news, it's just a weird Mad Lib that you're squinting at going, huh? But then next up today, we need to talk about how California Democrats just did what was once unthinkable. They're gutting environmental protections to help out construction projects across the state. Right? And so what you have here are bills that are called SB 131 and AB 130. And together, they carve out widespread exemptions to the California Environmental Quality Act, which has long been a roadblock for major construction projects across the state. And for Governor Gavin Newsom, this was essential. I mean, he even tied his signature on a new budget to SB 131 and AB 130 passing. And notably, both of them did with almost no opposition in the state House or Senate. And so with that, one of the big questions is, well, what exactly is being affected here? Well, the Environmental Quality Act, it's long been a headache for construction across the state since it requires companies to not only point out the environmental impacts that their construction projects will have, which is actually something that federal law requires, but also address those impacts. And if they didn't, it was used to kill projects by groups that opposed them, all of which heavily slowed down construction projects in the state and bloated the cost of them. Right? And its critics point to it as one of the reasons that the California Speed Rail project has barely made any progress. Also, the law's been blamed for the homeless situation and the extreme housing shortage across California as it puts a major cost on developers before they even break ground. But to be clear here, it's not just the Environmental Quality Act that causes this. There's also city regulations that prevent construction, although places like Los Angeles are making moves to change those local ordinances as well. And over the last few years, lawmakers have made hundreds of efforts to slowly try to encourage more housing development, with State Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks, for example, saying, "Crisis has metastasized to such a level that our constituents are demanding it." And that's not all. These bills also make it far easier for the state to enact wildfire prevention measures. So this includes things like conducting controlled burns, which has been on the back burner for years now, which is also something that's essential as forest fires are natural in California, but normally they happen far more often without human intervention. But it makes it so that the undergrowth's not able to build up and fuel these just monster fires that we see now. And then this pair of laws also makes it far easier to start construction projects for things like high-tech semiconductor manufacturing and EV factories, which is something that the state feels is necessary if it's going to continue being a major player in the tech space. And interestingly, this bill might show just how much the Democratic Party is shifting its positions. Because up until 2024, the idea of attacking environmental provisions this strongly, it was pretty much off limits. But with things like the housing crisis in California being described as the civil rights struggle of our time here in California by people like Assemblyman Robert Rivas, it's easy to see why they're shifting positions so much. And then, considering California is the most populous state and a Democratic powerhouse, it's easy to draw the conclusion that if the state party is shifting, it's a sign that the national party could follow. Though that said, I will say, there is opposition. For some lawmakers, they feel like this is going to be devastating in the years to come. And you did have tons of groups coming out to try and lobby against the bills, including unions like the Teamsters, United Auto Workers, and United Steelworkers, who claim that this was like Trump rolling back the National Environmental Policy Act, and that, quote, it would give carte blanche to companies like Tesla to expand without any environmental oversight. But that opposition was comparatively small as the bill overwhelmingly passed and Newsom signed it last night. Right, so now not only might we see serious efforts to build way more affordable houses in California, but also it's a possible sign of just how much the Democratic Party is willing to shift positions. So then next up from that today, we got to talk about former presidents from both parties now criticizing Donald Trump for condemning millions of people to death. Right, and that it stems from the Trump administration gutting the U.S. Agency for International Development, which used to give food, water, medicine, financing, and democracy assistance to poor countries. But then, back in March, Trump, through Marco Rubio, ordered that whatever's left of USAID, which isn't much, would be absorbed into the State Department on Tuesday. Meaning that yesterday was its last day in existence as an independent agency, bringing its 6-decade-long life to a sudden end. And to mourn this loss, you had thousands of staffers holding a video conference in which they received farewells from numerous speakers. With people like the president of Liberia, a humanitarian worker who recalled being greeted by USAID as a frightened 8-year-old child in a refugee camp, and a World Food Program official who vowed through sobs that the agency's mission would be back someday. But easily, the two most high-profile names were Barack Obama and George W. Bush. And this was especially personal for Bush because an AIDS and HIV program that's credited with saving some 25 million lives, known as PEPFAR, it started under his administration. So in his message, he asked, "Is it in our national interest that 25 million people who would have died now live? I think it is, and so do you." And adding, "On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you for your hard work, and God bless you." But then Obama is saying, "Gutting USAID is a travesty, and it's a tragedy, because it's some of the most important work happening anywhere in the world." And adding, "Sooner or later, leaders on both sides of the aisle will realize how much you are needed." But this is, in the meantime, you had the State Department telling the Associated Press that it would be introducing the department's foreign assistance successor to USAID this week, which is set to be called America First, and saying that the new process will ensure there is proper oversight and that every tax dollar spent will help advance our national interests. But then also, notably, as you had them saying that, a study just came out in the Lancet Medical Journal that shed light on what's being lost in the transition. Right? And they estimate that the gutting of USAID could result in 14 million more deaths worldwide by 2030. Right? And that is, they added that over the past 2 decades, USAID funded programs, they prevented more than 91 million deaths globally, including causing 30 million deaths among children. And then you've got more news in just a minute, but first, roaming charges are just your carrier's passive-aggressive way of saying, we hope you get lost in Italy. Right? I mean, stop paying $40 to post a single Instagram story. Get Saily and stop letting your mobile carrier rob you. Because for me, I use today's sponsor, Saily, the eSIM app that actually makes staying connected abroad not a nightmare. And I'll say, unlike your ex, Saily doesn't ghost you after one country. You download it once and you get access across over 200 destinations. Plus, their built-in ad blocker, it helps you use up to 28% less data. And the plans, they're affordable, coverage is global, and setup takes less time than it does to get through customs. Just download the app or scan the QR code, choose the country, then plan, and for you guys, enter code PHIL to get 15% off. You can message your partner, book your ride, find your hotel, all while other tourists are still figuring out where to buy a SIM. Also a big thing, there are full refunds if your phone's not eSIM compatible. And again, I've used this personally. It saved my ass more than once. I recently used it in Jamaica. It was great. So hey, scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description, and don't forget to use code PHIL at checkout to save 15%. Go travel, but don't travel dumb. Travel Saily. But then next up in the news today, we have to talk about how you have Russia claiming to have taken full control of an entire Ukrainian region for the first time, taking its first village in a whole other region, and they're amassing tens of thousands of troops along a widening front line. Right, and that after it also just launched its biggest aerial attack of the war over the weekend. Again, with them launching drones and missiles at several regions across the country, including in western Ukraine, far from the front line. And those strikes have reportedly killed almost a dozen people in different parts of the country, including the pilot of a Western-supplied F-16 warplane that was shot down while trying to fight off the attack. Which, I mean, that alone, that's a big deal because only a small number of the country's top pilots have actually been trained to fly those planes, which are among the most advanced of Ukraine's fighter jets. And so then with all that, you had senior Trump envoy Keith Kellogg writing on X, Russia cannot continue to stall for time while it bombs civilian targets in Ukraine. With Kellogg then also rejecting recent comments by a Russian spokesperson blaming the US and Ukraine for holding up the peace talks and adding, we urge an immediate ceasefire and a move to trilateral talks to end the war. Though counter to Kellogg's point that Russia can't do this, the question becomes, well, why? Because even as we've been talking more and more about a peace deal since Trump got elected, Russia has only ramped up its attacks over the past year, especially with using drones. But they launched a record-breaking 5,438 drones in June, according to official data that was analyzed by the Associated Press. And then on top of that, it's also widening the war on the ground. I mean, according to Ukraine's top military commander, the front line has now grown by more than 100 miles over just the past year, and claiming that Russian forces have been probing in different spots across the line and then pushing really hard when they find one that gives. With the commander saying that this leaves Ukrainian military leaders playing whack-a-mole and they send in elite units to help plug in gaps. And that, as he says, there's now over 110,000 Russian troops in one part of the front line alone, right near a key city in the Donetsk region where there are at least 50 clashes every single day. And that compared to only 70,000 Russian troops in the area last December. And now you also have Russia claiming to have seized all of the Luhansk region. And if that's true, it would be the first Ukrainian region to be fully occupied by Moscow. Because even though Russia illegally annexed 4 regions from Ukraine in September of 2022, it hadn't yet fully controlled a single one. And that, as you have Russian state media now reporting that forces have captured a village in a different region for the first time in their 3-year offensive. Though there, I'll say Russian officials similarly claim that their forces had entered the region 3 weeks ago, but Ukrainian authorities said that the assault was repelled. But also, either way, Russia's just been pounding the region, killing at least 17 civilians in a strike last week that damaged schools, hospitals, and a passenger train. And then on top of that, you reportedly have about 50,000 troops in the area bordering Russia's Kursk region, where Russian forces have almost entirely pushed back Ukrainian forces that launched an incursion there last year. And then with all this, we've recently seen Zelensky signing a decree to withdraw Ukraine from a treaty banning anti-personnel landmines, which actually follows similar steps by the Baltic states and Poland, with one Ukrainian politician explaining this is a step that the reality of war has long demanded, and then adding that Russia is not a party to the convention and is massively using mines against our military and civilians. But for now, we'll have to see if there are any updates. I mean, you have Trump today saying that he's watching the situation very closely. He's also reportedly considering giving Ukraine more Patriot missile systems to help it defend against the Russian strikes. Words are words and actions are actions, so who knows what's gonna happen. But then shifting gears to a different kind of news as we're beginning to wind down today's show, let me talk about this story because this is insane, right? Because what was supposed to be a photo op on the happiest cruise on Earth, it turned into a real-life rescue mission. And it all went down on the last leg of a 4-day Disney cruise through the Bahamas. Because according to one passenger, there was this father who was taking a photo of his young daughter on the railing of the ship when she all of a sudden fell overboard, with him then reportedly jumping into the water after her. So the alarm sounds throughout the ship, passengers were then quick to gather around the railing, see what the hell was going on, with passengers then later giving interviews and saying things like, it was crazy, it was horrific, saying the ship was moving quickly, so quickly, it's crazy how quickly the people became tiny dots in the sea and then you lost sight of them, and saying his child fell in the water and he instinctively, without hesitation, jumped in and went after his child. I believe, had he not done that, his child might not have survived. And luckily, within minutes and in front of that audience, staff on the cruise ship were out in the water performing a rescue, with several of the videos showing different angles of the moment that the rescue boat rolled up with the father and the daughter and pulled them to safety. The Disney spokesperson later saying in a statement, the crew aboard the Disney Dream swiftly rescued rescue 2 guests from the water. We commend our crew members for their exceptional skills and prompt actions, which ensured the safe return of both guests to the ship within minutes. And, honestly, with this, I gotta say, this is a rare situation. And I don't just mean, it's rare for a passenger to fall off a cruise ship. I also mean that, when it does happen, it usually doesn't end well. According to some of the most recent data from 2019, it showed that only 9 of the 25 people who fell overboard were actually rescued. Luckily, in this case, they were on the other side of those odds in a good way. But then, finally today, let's talk about y'all's questions and comments on yesterday's show and some commentary brought to you by BeautifulBastard.com, where last night I dropped a little special Phil's Cynic drop, featuring full of microplastics and existential dread. It is what it is, and it's pretty terrible. Things are less than ideal, and the cat stand and fight tea. And if you use code 2BITS at checkout before Friday, you can get all of those and anything else on site for 25% off. Diving into commentary, I wanted to address something that I've seen comments kind of all over social media and on the text line. Because, yesterday I talked about the movies and the TV shows and the audiobooks that I've been consuming. And I've had some people asking, have you been watching this season of Love Island? And to that, I would say 99% no. My wife watches it, so sometimes I'll hear it in the background when I'm doing something else. On TikTok, every now and then I'll get a random thing and I'm just like, what? Why does this Jeremiah dude look like if you asked AI what an attractive person looks like? Also, why is it every 12 to 24 hours everyone's opinion around this girl Hudda changes? I don't know, I don't care, but here's what I'll say. I'm also not a part of the group that shit talks people that are watching this season. I'm not gonna yuck anyone's yum here. I think everyone needs a little bit of escapism right now. And so taking that in mind, I can kind of understand why this specific season of Love Island would be so popular. Watching hot strangers maybe fuck each other sounds way more fun than watching old politicians definitely fuck the country. But then also, I had a lot of people going, Phil, did you see the Project Hail Mary trailer? Are you excited? Oh my fucking God, yes. I've been pushing this book on anyone that'll listen to me. And I do want to apologize in advance because most of my personality for the next 8 to 9 months is gonna be just me talking about how fucking excited I am for this movie. The book is great. The audiobook is stellar. The visuals of this movie look amazing. And who doesn't like my boy Gosling? The worst thing about this movie is that I'm gonna have to wait to watch it. And actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna go into the comments on yesterday's video. Let's end on an escapist note. Let's end today talking about stuff that we're looking forward to. We can return to the dumpster fire of a situation we're looking at right now tomorrow. Yeah, and so on that note, let me just say thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. And of course, remember, come back tomorrow because I got a brand new show for you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Stay safe out there. Stay sane out there.